Hey there, men. Happy Truck Talk Thursday to you. Mike Yarbrough here, coming at you from the Wolf and Iron podcast and my truck. I appreciate you guys listening. If you're new here, if you haven't listened to the Wolf and Iron podcast before and you're kind of wondering what's going on, you can probably hear my turn signal. I am navigating life, navigating the roads a little bit here, but I'm also just sharing some thoughts on manhood, on life as a man with you guys, in just a very just sort of conversational way, and there's no fluff, there's no production type of stuff that happens with these episodes. They're just a really quick way for me to share some ideas with you guys about what it means to be a man, life as a man, in all of its various forms. And today we're going to be talking about homeschooling and my family's experience doing that, the pros to it, the cons to it, if I can think of any. But before I do that, I want to ask you guys for something. I don't ask for anything really on the podcast, and a friend of mine reminded me that I need to do this more often. If you guys would, please subscribe to the podcast, share the podcast, and leave a review. Now, this is really on me for not asking for this more often, and I know you guys have done this. I know you guys genuinely appreciate the podcast. You let me know through emails and that kind of stuff. But one of the best ways that you can show your support for Wolf and Iron and what we've got going on in the mission is to share, subscribe, and review. And so if you would, just take a few minutes to do one or all of those things today. It's so appreciated. Now on to homeschooling. So my family and I, we've homeschooled now, my boys are 16 and 19 as I record this. My 19-year-old's off to college, so yes, homeschooling works. My 16-year-old is still kind of in the homeschool world. I'll explain a little bit more about that in just a bit. We live in Charlotte, and because we live in a city, there are a lot more opportunities, I think, than what it would have been like if we had tried to do this in more of a rural community, or if we were more spread out. In Charlotte, actually, one of the benefits that we have is that the schools are kind of terrible. I mean, that's just telling it like it is. And this is all over the country, obviously. We know this. Schools aren't doing the job of educating our children. They're doing more of indoctrinating our children into believing things that go against traditional family values, Christian values, what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, those kinds of things. But even before that really kind of began to get off that sounds bad. Before that really began to get off the ground like it has in the last few years, there was still just poor education, poor quality of education. And also just, we knew that the values that we wanted our kids to have were not being instilled. And a lot of parents in the area, they know that, they get that. And so there's a big homeschool community in Charlotte. And there are a lot of resources here. So we had some benefits. When our kid Aiden was our first, and so he's the 19-year-old now. When he was, I don't know, whatever age kids go to preschool, I guess it's probably about 4 or so. Somewhere between 3 and 4, we were trying to put him in preschool. And even that was kind of like, they were teaching stuff that I was like, that doesn't make sense. Like, that's terrible. Like, why would you teach a kid that? Really that kind of pussyfooted, everybody's a winner kind of thing. And granted, they're little kids, I get it, but I could see where it was going. There was also issues with, the teachers didn't want to discipline the kids, and it was just rubbing us the wrong way. And my wife has been the champion for this long before I got on board fully. I was more like, hey, look, if you want to homeschool and you think you can do it, go for it, I like the sort of rebellious nature of it and the freedom that was going to come with it. But she really just decided early on, right then and there, that she wanted to stay at home. And she wanted to be the kind of mom that was going to be at home with the kids, schooling them and doing all that. This was before we realized that both of our kids had autism issues. This was before anything that we knew would help with that, or with any kind of sensitivities to foods and that kind of stuff. So there's a whole nother story that I could put in here about how our kids both were born on the spectrum of some kind. One sensory seeking, one sensory defensive, and the both having learning disabilities or fine motor skill disabilities and things of that nature. And also when the whole like organic movement was still starting out. People didn't know if that was even true. Going gluten-free, the fact that eating dyes actually affect the way your kids act, all this other kind of stuff. So there was a whole road here that we were going to go down that we didn't even know about, but we're so thankful that we began to homeschool because it really put us in a position to focus on our kids in a way that they would have never got the right attention at school, and it allowed us to really dig into what are the issues, how can we solve the problems, even just to experiment with things as time went on. What kind of foods do they eat that seem to give them a good day or a good week? What happens when they eat some sugar, or what happens when they have something that has dyes in it, or they have this something that has wheat in it, or whatever. These things that we wouldn't have really had a chance to monitor and effectively and really observe their behavior. And I say we, like I said early on, guys, this was my wife. I was still kind of a dummy in my 20s. I was really just trying to figure out the whole career thing and what I want to do with my life and that sort of thing. But as a family, we're homeschooling, and early on, I still remember one of the proudest moments that I had when the kids were really little. Aiden was still, I don't know, he's probably 6 or so. I don't know what age kids start learning. I sound like a bad homeschooling dad, but one of the things you'll realize is when you homeschool, a lot of things get muddled together. Grades don't really matter as much. It's sort of like, what are the kids ready to learn? When are they ready to learn it? And so age is the typical age of like when you started to learn or when you did math and got good at this or that. Like you go through school, it doesn't really apply to homeschool. It's all over the place. Your kids can be like in 3 different grades at the same time. It's nuts. Anyhow, Aiden spelled the word robot, and he spelled it RBT, which is not totally correct. But aside from the letter O, it was pretty darn close. And I just remember him writing that out on his own and just kind of putting that together and going, robot, just based on the way the letter sounded. And just feeling proud. And for me, that was that moment of like, yeah, we can do this. Like if our kid can almost learn how to spell robot, that's that's quite an accomplishment, and we should be proud of ourselves. So as the years went on, the challenges increased. A lot of that due to the kids' autism issues, not even knowing what that was. I mean, nobody came to us and said, oh, your kids have Asperger's or some form of autism and fine motor skill problems. And that's why when you take one of your kids out to the grocery store, he's licking everything in sight. And you take your other kid out to the grocery store and he's can't stand it. He's about to have basically a nervous breakdown because he's got to go there and then he's got to go to another place and another place, And we didn't know if that was normal. We're trying to like, what's wrong with our kids? What are we doing wrong here? And it wasn't easy, guys. It wasn't easy. And we had a lot of years like that. Many years of going to occupational therapy, many years of even doing brain therapy, and not in like the invasive kind of way, but just in more teaching the brain how to think and how to perceive things, the eyes, and things of that nature. So anyhow, a lot of therapy, a lot of stuff that was out of pocket, people didn't believe in, but stuff that actually absolutely helped big time, and our kids wouldn't be where they are today if it wasn't for some of the stuff that we did. So a lot of challenges along with it, guys, but also the freedom to be able to do those things, guys. I mean, so we did have one experience where we tried to put our youngest in public school. We did that for about 9 months. Here was kind of how that went. He was in, let's see, what grade was he in when he was there? Maybe 8th grade. Goes into school and is having some issues just concentrating on what the teacher's talking about and writing at the same time. And, the homeschool is very different, right? It's much more of a one-on-one, or you're in a smaller kind of setting. Here he is in a room with 15, 20 kids. The teacher's writing stuff on the board, kind of telling them, hey, you got to remember to take this work home. You got to remember to do this. Don't forget on Tuesday we got a test on this, and that kind of stuff. And so it's not as much hand-holding. It is much, well, you guys know, most of you were public school just like I was. And so you got to either keep up or you just fall behind. Well, he was falling behind. And we told the teachers, we're like, look, he's having an issue here. He probably needs to sit up closer. It'd be great if he could have like a handout of this, or maybe even just be able to record it on some kind of a device and then jot it down later, because he's having a hard time listening to what the teacher's saying and then also taking the notes quickly enough and organizing all that and before the bell rings. And they said, well, here's the thing, we've got to let your kids fail first. And we said, what? I said, yeah, we got to let your kids fail first, and then once your kid starts to fail, then we can request a formal diagnosis kind of thing for him to get formally diagnosed with a learning disability. And then once he gets diagnosed with a learning disability, depending on what type it is, he can go into kind of like a level 1 sort of a remediation, or not remediation, a level 1 kind of help state. He can do some things, but he can't do all the things he wants to do, or the things that would really help him to feel that, to be successful here. And then what we'll have to do is let him fail again. And then once he fails the second time, then we can definitely get him classified as like whatever the, serious learning disability. And that's when we think he can get the help that he needs. That's insane, guys. I mean, that's just insane. I'm like, he's one kid out of the class. Just let him sit up close. Let him chew some gum during class. Let him, get up and walk around a little bit more than some of the other kids, or whatever the case is, right? Anyhow, so without going into all of the details, that did not work out, and we pulled him out of that and went back the homeschooling track. Now, I'm not going to get into like curriculum and what that was like. Basically, there's umpteen bazillion different ways to homeschool your kids, and that is a precise number. We have everything from basically sit your kid in front of the TV and let them watch some kind of pre-recorded, schooling session that some guy put in, created back in like the 90s and has converted from like VHS to like DVDs and that kind of stuff, and then now finally online. And so really, really dorky kind of stuff. You've got the expert level kind of, book learning kid. You're going to buy all this curriculum and the kid's going to sit down and learn all these things. You got all this middle, kind of in between stuff too. You can even do like a hodgepodge thing of like, oh, I'll have these kind of online courses, and then we'll do these kinds of some things that are more hands-on learning stuff, and then you can even tailor that stuff to whatever your kids like. So, if your kid likes a particular the particular way somebody does math, either through a book or through an online course, they can follow that person. History, and things like that don't have to be your typical kind of like sit down and read a book on history. We've done some things where it's like, that's really boring, just reading a book on, things that happen. Why don't we actually watch some shows on this and talk about it, right? So we'll watch some things on the Civil War, or we'll watch some stuff on, there's a lot of stuff actually on the History Channel that's been pretty good, series and things like that. And so we'll go through some of those things. So it's really varied in terms of curriculum, what the kids are going to learn, what pace they learn things at. And, things like math, for example, you may find that some boys especially, a lot of times aren't ready for the higher levels of math until they're like 30. So, we just kind of put stuff off. And it's like, you don't really need to learn that. I mean, practically, you don't need to learn any of that stuff. Now, there's stuff that you got to get through just because of state test and that kind of crap. But, for the most part, there are a lot of things that you don't have to be super proficient in that most people just kind of push through high school anyhow, and they don't remember as soon as they're done with the test. And so you get to have the freedom there to really make the curriculum what works best for your son or your daughter. The other thing I love about it, guys, is the few vacations that we took as a homeschooling family, because we didn't have a lot of money, and also because of all the medical issues and autism issues, we couldn't really travel very much. But when we did, we could go at like whenever we felt like it. It was awesome. I'd just be like, hey, I'm taking off of work in October for like 2 weeks, and we'd go to Disney or something like that. Going to see family and not having to worry about when does school start back. And it's interesting now, actually. So where we are now is kind of muddled with this whole vacation stuff. Our 19-year-old's in college, as I said. He's there actually on a full tuition not full tuition. What is it called? Basically the scholarship where you get full tuition for your education, but you still got to pay for room and board and all that kind of stuff. So maybe that is full tuition. I don't remember. In any case, he's there on a scholarship down in Anderson, South Carolina because he was very smart and did very good on ASAT and SATs and all that kind of stuff. ASAT doesn't sound right. Anyhow, he did really well in all the things that matter in colleges. So he's down there with kind of on not a full ride, but full tuition, I think. And obviously that means that he's got to be there at college for a certain period of time while college is in session and those sort of things. And we're really just starting to experience this whole thing of what it's like to have to bend to somebody else's rules and have to plan your time around like, okay, well, we've got to do stuff during the summer while there's college break. That's kind of unusual for us. Our 16-year-old has actually been in something of a tutorial school. So he's still technically homeschooled. But for the last few years, he's been in a tutorial school. And what that means is, I don't know if they have these all over the place, but we have it here in Charlotte. And it's just essentially a bunch of parents get together, hire some teachers to teach subjects to students. And so it's like an a la carte class thing. So if you need to do some higher maths, or you want to do some science stuff, whatever maybe homeschooling marm isn't good at teaching, well, they can do these things here. Plus, as the kids get older, they want more social interaction. They want more time with their friends, that kind of stuff. They're tired of just hanging out with their brothers and sisters. So this is a really, really good thing. Helps them to transition into college life and whatnot. But it also still leaves it in the hands of the parents as to what we teach. You know, what's the ultimate, what are the values that we're instilling, what's the curriculum that they're going to have, that kind of stuff. So our 16-year-old's been doing this now for a few years, and it seems to be going pretty well. That also has with it the challenges of vacation schedules and things now have to follow kind of this typical school year kind of stuff. But while the kids were young, guys, this was really awesome just to be able to have birthday parties when we wanted to. And most of their kids were homeschooled. Most of their friends were homeschooled, rather. So we didn't have to worry so much about, who could show up when and things of that nature. So there's just a lot of freedom that comes in it. And there's also a lot of pride that comes in homeschooling, knowing that you're really putting your best effort forward to help your kid have the best advantages in life, to some degree, in terms of education, but also really just that foundational character and the values and instilling those things in your kids. Guys, that you can't take that for granted. And I don't trust the school system to raise my kids. And think about it. If your kids are going to be gone for the prime time of day, most days of the week, Monday through Friday, and you're only going to get a chance to see them as a parent, typically, maybe in the morning before you go to work, and then just, let's be honest, an hour and a half maybe at night where you're actually interacting with your kid. And then sometime on the weekends, which is usually taking the kids all over the place, and you got soccer and you got football practice or baseball practice or whatever the case is. You got errands to run, you got grocery stores to go to. Guys, who's having the bigger influence on your kids? I think that's an easy question to answer. Who's having the bigger influence on your kids? Doesn't matter if you're a great parent. Who's having the bigger influence on your kids? It's going to be the school system and their peers. And who's influencing the school system these days? I love teachers. I appreciate all that they do, but they are working. They're fighting a hard battle, really, to try and keep values and character in their classrooms in a place where they can't talk about God, where they can't really even address particular values and morality of children. They can't even address issues of what it means to be a girl or what it means to be a boy, even if the students come to them and ask them particularly, even if they know that the student's dealing with some particular problems in their home. I mean, teachers are basically handcuffed. And so, no matter their intentions, there's still this environment. Now, speaking of handcuffs, I'm actually passing by some guys that literally are getting handcuffed right now by the police. Well, that's a bad start to a Monday as I record this. Anyhow, the teachers are doing their best, guys, but they're in an environment where indoctrination is taking place on our kids. And their peers who don't have good family situations are being indoctrinated as well. Pop culture is dominating conversations. And so, guys, you want to have the best influence on your children? You're going to have to do something different. You want your family life to look different than what you're seeing out there? You're going to have to make some changes. You're going to have to make some hard decisions. I'm not saying homeschooling's for everybody. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying everybody has to homeschool or you're going to raise a bunch of brats and you're just contributing to the downfall of America. I might be saying that a little bit, but I'm not saying that totally. What I am saying is that you can't expect to get different results without making some changes. If your life doesn't look different than your neighbor's life, then don't expect to have a different result than what they have. You may have to have a really serious conversation with your wife on, is this fit for you guys? Is this something that you should be doing? Is this something that is going to work for your family? Those kinds of things. But you definitely need to have a conversation about how are you guys going to mitigate the influence of public schools on your children? How are you going to make that happen? It's not going to happen naturally. If you don't put a plan in place, it's not going to happen. So look, I know this has been a little bit long, guys. This has been I keep going on for more and more on this. Look, I think a great place to talk about these kind of things would be over in our Wolf and Iron community. It's our free Facebook group. And the guys over there, I mean, they're varied. I'm definitely, probably, I would say, definitely, probably, there are far more guys who do the traditional public school or maybe even private school, basically outsourced education, than there are people who do homeschool. But there are a number of guys over there who do homeschool, and I imagine that if you throw a question out there about homeschooling, what works, what doesn't, how to make the transition, maybe even from like public school life to homeschool life, a lot of kids actually want this. A lot of kids, and you guys may have kids who are 10, 11, even in the teenage years, are asking, please homeschool me. Please just let me come home and let me get out of this environment. Look, don't see that as a sign of weakness. I take that seriously. But ask the questions over there to the guys, and you can head over to the group by going to wolfandiron.com/thegroup. And that's wolfandiron.com/thegroup. If you're not a member yet, there are a few questions for you to answer, and make sure you answer those. We'll let you into the group, assuming that you're a good fit, and throw out whatever questions you guys have about homeschooling, about even just if you're going to continue the public education route. What do you do to start instilling character and being a primary influence in your kid's life? It's not going to happen without a plan. All right, fellas, I kind of rambled a little bit here. I hope this is helpful anyhow. Look forward to talking to you guys. Have a good Thursday.